The room was electric. Cameras flashed, pens tapped against notepads, and the low hum of whispered conversations filled the air. Karoline Leavitt stood at the podium, her sharp eyes scanning the room. She had faced tough crowds before, but today felt different. The tension was palpable, like a storm brewing just beneath the surface. Little did she know, this press briefing would soon spiral into a viral spectacle, sparking a nationwide debate about press freedom, transparency, and the fine line between journalism and activism. Karoline adjusted the microphone and began with her usual confidence. "Good afternoon, everyone. Let's get started." Hands shot up across the room, and she pointed to a familiar face, a reporter from a major network. The questions started rolling in, one after another. Tax policies, education reform, economic growth. Karoline answered each one easily, her responses polished and professional. She had done this countless times before. For her, it was just another day at the podium. But then, a voice cut through the room, sharper than the rest. It was her, the liberal reporter known for her aggressive style and knack for stirring controversy. She was seated near the front, leaning forward with a smirk, her pen tapping rhythmically against her notepad. "Ms. Leavitt," the reporter began, her tone dripping with challenge, "let's talk about the real issue here. Do you think the administration's policies are intentionally designed to suppress certain communities? Because the data suggests otherwise." Karoline held up a hand, her expression calm but firm. "I've answered that question before. The administration is focused on policies that benefit all Americans, regardless of background. If you'd like to discuss the specifics of today's topic, I'm happy to continue." The room fell silent for a moment, but the reporter wasn't done. She leaned in further, her voice rising. "You didn't answer the question, though. Can you directly address whether these policies are suppressing marginalized groups?" Karoline's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She glanced at the other journalists, signaling that she was ready to move on. But the reporter pressed again, her voice cutting through the room like a knife. "I just don't see why you're avoiding it. It's a simple yes or no. Are these policies suppressing marginalized groups?" The temperature in the room shifted. Other reporters exchanged glances, some intrigued, others uncomfortable. No one liked a press conference turning into a showdown, but that's exactly what was happening. Karoline exhaled slowly, her hands gripping the edges of the podium. "I'm not avoiding anything. I'm staying on topic. If you have a question related to today's discussion, I'll gladly answer it. Otherwise, I'll be moving on." But the reporter wasn't backing down. She leaned even closer to the microphone, her smirk widening. "So, that's a no comment, then?" The energy in the room tightened, the weight of the moment settling on everyone's shoulders. It was clear this wasn't just a press conference anymore, it was becoming a spectacle. A hush fell over the room. No one spoke, but the silence wasn't empty. It was loaded, like an elastic band stretched just before it snapped. Karoline adjusted her stance, placing both hands on the podium. "I've answered your question. I'll be moving on now." She pointed to another journalist in the back, but before they could speak, the same voice cut through again. "Why is it so hard for you to give a straight answer?" the reporter demanded, her tone sharp and unrelenting. A flicker of irritation crossed Karoline's face, just a brief tightening around the eyes, but enough for those paying attention to catch it. She wasn't new to this. She knew reporters had a job to do, but there was a difference between pressing for accountability and turning an event into a personal stage. And right now, it was clear which one this was. Karoline inhaled deeply, her voice steady but firm. "I don't believe in wasting anyone's time. If you have a new question, I'll answer it. Otherwise, I'd like to give others a chance." The reporter smirked. "New question. Why is this administration so afraid of transparency?" A few quiet gasps rippled through the room. Some reporters scribbled furiously, sensing the moment turning into something bigger. Karoline gave a measured blink, the only sign that the remark had landed. Her grip on the podium tightened for a second before she let go, exhaling just slightly. She smiled, but it wasn't a warm, diplomatic kind of smile. This was different, a smile that said, "I see exactly what you're trying to do." Transparency, Karoline began, her voice calm but cutting, is exactly what this administration stands for. But what you're doing isn't about transparency. It's about theatrics. The words hung in the air, heavy and charged. The reporter's smirk faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "So, you're dismissing valid concerns as theatrics? The American people deserve real answers." The cameras caught everything, the slight tilt of Karoline's head, the way the other journalists shifted in their seats. Some were frustrated that the event had been hijacked. A veteran journalist, someone who had been covering politics for decades, leaned back and muttered to his colleagues, "This isn't journalism, this is performance art." But the reporter didn't care. She knew exactly what she was doing. The longer she kept this going, the more likely it was to go viral. A confrontation like this, it was gold for social media. Karoline saw it too. She had a choice: engage and give the moment more fuel, or shut it down entirely. She sighed, finally looking toward security at the side of the room. She didn't have to say anything. The shift in her gaze was enough. The room tensed again. Everyone knew what that meant. This was no longer just an argument, it was about to escalate. The reporter, a woman in her early 30s with sharp eyes and an unwavering posture, didn't move. She was still leaning forward, her pen resting against her notepad, a quiet smirk playing at the corner of her mouth. She wasn't here to ask a question. She was here to make a point. Karoline straightened, her voice firm. "I'll say this one more time, if you have a relevant question, I will answer it. But I'm not going to stand here and engage in bad faith arguments." The reporter chuckled softly, shaking her head. "Bad faith? Ms. Leavitt, I'm doing my job. Isn't that what a free press is for?" Karoline didn't blink. A free press is about holding people accountable. What you're doing is trying to turn this into a spectacle. Karoline adjusted the microphone slightly, taking a step back from the podium. "I think we're done here." The words sent a shockwave through the room. The reporter's eyebrows lifted. "Excuse me?" Karoline didn't flinch. "You've made it clear you're not interested in an actual discussion. You're looking for a headline. If you'd like to stay and listen to the rest of the press conference, you're welcome to. But I won't be answering any more of your questions." The reporter let out a quiet laugh, shaking her head, so silencing the press. "Got it." Karoline's jaw tightened. She knew that was coming. She knew exactly how this would be spun the second the cameras went off, but she also knew there was no winning with someone like this. She glanced toward security again, a subtle wordless signal. And just like that, everything changed. The reporter was escorted out, muttering about press freedom and democracy. The room was left in stunned silence. Karoline continued the briefing, but the real storm was just beginning. Within minutes, the footage spread like wildfire. By the time Karoline left the podium, her name was already trending. Conservative media praised her for standing her ground, while liberal outlets painted her as an authoritarian figure silencing the press. The country was split, and the debate raged on for days. In the end, Karoline released the full, unedited footage of the exchange.